District Chairman of the Republican Party, Mr. Jim Weiss. He's our timekeeper. When Jim's going to hold up a 3 or 2 minute to go, and you'll know then how much you got. But when you see Jim stand and cross his arms, you know you're done. Okay? And I'm sure everyone's going to be nice to each other. What we're going to do is we're going to start with our U.S. Senator candidates. We're going to move down the ballot. Each person will speak in the order that their name appears on the ballot in Barren County, Kentucky. That way, that's exactly the way we decided to do it. What's the way we've done it always here at the Lincoln Dinner is people speak in the order their name appears on the ballot. So we're going to start with our U.S. senatorial candidates, and our first person, U.S. Senator candidates are going to get 10 minutes, okay? Because that's a statewide office. Everybody else, starting with state representative on down, gets 5. If you don't have any competition in the fall, try to get us to the ball game quick, okay? Okay, so we're going to start with U.S. Senator, and our first candidate to speak is Dr. Rand Paul.
Thank you for having me. We're glad to be here today. I'm still working. My wife told me, whatever you do, don't quit your day job. So I'm still a practicing physician, and I apologize in advance. I am covering for my practice, and I'll have to leave after my remarks, but I want to thank you very much for allowing me to come. Sometimes campaigning is not nearly as glamorous as you might think. It is 5 hours on the road, McDonald's, and a few more hours than that some days. Some days you wake up and you say, 5 hours on the road, wouldn't I rather be home with my family? A few weeks ago I was thinking that and saying, not another 5-hour trip in the car. And my phone rang, and on the other end of the line was a very distinctive Alaskan voice of Governor Sarah Palin. She was calling to wish me well in the campaign, to let me know of her endorsement, and that she will do anything she can to help me in the primary. A few years back, there was and that got my spirits up a little bit, got me moving again. A few years back, there was a congressman, and he'd been a Democrat and then a Republican. He was kind of known for blowing in the wind a little bit. And there was a very important budget vote, kind of like the health care vote that we're having now. People didn't know which way he was going to vote. The vote was very close, and in the end, he ended up voting for the budget. And he came out on the House steps, and the press was there to greet him on the steps of the Capitol, and they said, how did you make your decision? He said, well, I went with the best deal. And they looked at him, and they said, does that mean your vote's for sale? He said, no, but it's darn sure for rent. It'd be funny if it weren't so tragic, but that's the way it operates in Washington. For so long, these career politicians have operated by going with the best deal. And it's a sad state of affairs. Look at Senator Ben Nelson, sold his very soul to try to get a special deal for Nebraska on that health care plan. It was so blatantly unconstitutional, even the Democrats are going to leave it out of the final bill probably. Mary Landrieu, you've heard of the Louisiana Purchase, got $100 billion extra for Louisiana. They're buying and trading and renting their vote at our expense, and it's wrong, and it should come to a stop. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic. You'd say, well, maybe at least defense or homeland security, things that are very important to us, surely they wouldn't put earmarks on that, or they wouldn't be manipulating these bills in order to place special perks for their constituents. You'd be wrong. An auditor recently looked at the Homeland Security bill and found 8,591 earmarks placed on by the state of Indiana. Now, what were these things that Indiana thought was so important that they needed to protect them with federal dollars from terrorist attack? Now, let's see. Up on the list was Old McDonald's Petting Zoo, the Amish Popcorn Factory, the Mule Day Parade. It would be funny if it weren't so tragic, but you wonder why the deficit grows and grows. Even when we have things we need to be spending money on, people are placing their own personal pork barrel projects on them. Meanwhile, nearly a decade after 9/11, on 9/11, 16 out of 19 of the hijackers came here on legal visas. Basically, we stamped a visa, which is an invitation and approval by our government to come and visit. But you know, a decade later, when the underwear bomber came about on December 25th of this year, You know, we stamped his visa too, and we said, come and visit. He fit the very profile of a terrorist. He bought a one-way ticket with cash. He had no bags. To top it off, his father tried to turn him in at the U.S. Embassy, and we still said, welcome to our country, come and visit us. He'd been to Yemen twice in the last couple of years. Are there not some red flags here? And yet we said, come and visit. We've spent hundreds of billions of dollars, and we still are inept at some of these things. We have to do a better job. One of our first ads that we put out, I've called for a moratorium on travel visas from certain countries. There's no reason why, if you come from one of about 10 to 15 countries that either sponsor terrorism or allow terrorism to go unchecked, that we should have these people coming to our country. Let's don't give them visas at all. In that same ad, we've called for trying the prisoners held at Guantanamo Bay in military tribunals. I think if it's good enough for our soldiers, that's what happens. If a soldier in our army is accused of wrongdoing, they're tried in a military court. And we want to somehow say these terrorists deserve something better by being in civilian court? I think that's wrong. Now, some have taken some of my comments out of context, and I think it's important that we put them back in context. There's a little snippet you may have seen. It's about 3 or 4 words, and you wonder, gosh, is that his full statement on this? I did say that the people who cannot be convicted, or the people that our military tribunals find innocent, we should deport them to our own country. What were the other choices? It's not a perfect solution, but this is when they were talking about the Chinese Uyghurs. It's these 20 Muslims from China that we picked up in Afghanistan. They said, we're not going to try them. So the question was, do you want them on U.S. soil? And I said, no, I don't particularly want them on U.S. soil. Do you want to send them to Bermuda or to the South Pacific for $250 million? You know, that was the solution we came up with. We sent them to an island for $250 million. I said, we don't want them in the U.S. We don't want to spend $250 million and send them to a paradise, an island paradise. If there's no other choice, send them back where they came from. But it is wrong and intellectually dishonest to construe that to mean that I think Khalid Sheikh Mohammed ought to be released onto the battlefield. That's the implication, and that's intellectually dishonest. I run for office because I'm truly worried about our country. I think we're drowning in a sea of debt. The deficit this year is going to be nearly $2 trillion. 13% of our gross national product is our debt. The interest alone on our debt is $383 billion. We are spending more in interest on the debt than we spend for all the roads in the whole country. It's a disaster. Now, where I am different from some candidates, some Republicans don't like this, but I'm not willing